Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian M. Hauser. You can find me on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all the places at Hawk Blogger. You'll also hear my voice is a little bit worse for wear. it was a lot of screaming weekend. Went to the Mariners game on Saturday night. Unfortunately, they couldn't pull that one out. Then the Seahawks game on Sunday, and certainly blew my voice out there, doing the best I could. And then Sunday night, thankfully, thankfully, the Mariners found a way to pull out a victory in that one. So Seattle didn't have to go without a victory in a meaningful sporting event all weekend, which was nice. But I'll do my best to get through at least this episode today as we look back at this game against the Bucks, where the Seahawks fall 38-35 in a game outside of Seattle. Highly entertaining. Loved it. People are drooling over how fun this game was to watch and how great Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield looked and all that stuff. So that's good. If you are a Seahawks fan, you are looking at that defense and you're like, this was supposed to be a really good defensive team. The defense was supposed to be the foundation of this team. And the coach is supposed to be able to outcoach people from the defensive side of the ball. And that did not happen yesterday in any way, shape, or form. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in this episode. Some of that is injury related. We just got our latest injury updates from Mike Macdonald, which I'll share with you. Some good, some less than good. And there's also just the implications of what they're going to be able to do with the personnel that they do have going forward. And I think we should look at this in the bigger picture as well, as I always try to have us do. If you haven't already given the show a like and click subscribe, please do. Would greatly appreciate it. And at the same time, you've got an offense that is performing significantly above even the most optimistic expectations of what this could be. And just to give you some idea, this will probably be a little bit, I don't know if this is surprising, but this is the reality. With that game having been played, having the Seahawks give up 38 points and 400 plus yards of offense, the Seahawks are still the number 2 ranked team in the NFL by DVOA. They're behind the Detroit Lions, and they rank 3rd in offense. 3rd in offense. They are the number 1 ranked passing team in the NFL by DVOA. The number 1. I mean, we've all watched it happen, so I don't think it's that shocking at this point, but there is nobody anywhere that had this team as the number 1 ranked passing offense by DVOA 5 weeks into the season. Like, just no way. That's remarkable. And they are still the 8th ranked defense by DVOA, even after that absolute stinker yesterday. And they are still the number 1 ranked special teams. So is the sky falling? No, not necessarily. Was this a hugely damaging loss for what the Seahawks are trying to do? Yeah. I mean, you lose a conference game at home for the second time. That's a real big problem. Like NFC, like divisional games, conference games, they matter when it comes to tiebreakers. They matter when it comes to playoff positioning. Matters if you end up running into the Tampa Bay Bucks in the playoffs. You've lost the head-to-head. All of those things matter, and it sucks because it didn't have to be this way. There's a lot of ways it didn't have to be this way, but it is this way. So that's what we're kind of faced with, is looking at that. So let me get to the injury report first, and then I'm going to walk you through some of the PFF grades. There's some really eye-opening ones in there. And then we'll talk about, okay, so where do we go from here? Like, what's next? Injury situation. So Mike Macdonald just did his show with Brock and Salk. The Mike Macdonald show, he does that every morning following the game. And what he said, let's talk about Derek Hall first. It sounds like the way he put it with Derek Hall is Derek will unlikely be available this week, probably not the following week. And then the Seahawks have a bye after that. So the Seahawks have the Jaguars on Sunday, and then they have a Monday night game at home against the Texans, and then they have a bye week. What the coach said is they're going to have to look at timing. What he was referring to is, do they put him on IR? Because he'd have to miss a minimum of 4 weeks if they put him on IR. And I think they're probably trying to figure out whether they are better off doing that or not. So IR is on the table for Derek Hall. It seems pretty unlikely he's going to play before the bye week. So that's an issue. We'll talk about what their options are there. Devin Witherspoon. His update there was a little confusing. He said that Witherspoon is getting imaging done as we speak. So this was earlier this morning. And that they're hoping he gets back. So usually when you get imaging done, you're getting it because there's concern that things are not getting better and that there might be a bigger problem. But it's also possible that they're getting imaging done because they want verification that structurally he's ready to get out there and that this is okay to do. Not sure. And I'm guessing Mike Macdonald isn't really that sure. So we'll find out as of Wednesday whether or not Spoon will be back out there. Reek Woolen, no update. So concussion, don't know the severity of it, don't know how that's going to play out. Not sure. Julian Love. Sounds like they are not sure when Julian will be back this week. They're not sure he's going to practice. They're going to have to wait and see. That sounds like touch and go with his situation. And when you've got these soft tissue kind of injuries, hamstring, groin, they're trying to play the game of wanting to make sure that it is strong enough that he doesn't keep coming in and out of the lineup. They want him just to stay in. So don't know the situation, but you just probably err on the side of expecting that he won't play, but not sure. The most hopeful news in there was it sounds like he's hoping that DeMarcus Lawrence will be able to play and practice this week. But again, soft tissue injury with his quad. We'll just have to wait and see. So none of the updates were particularly good. None of them were, the worst case scenario. Like, they're not no season ending kind of stuff in the mix. But if you're hoping that the Seahawks were just going to get healthy this week, sorry, that's not going to be what happens. And it would not be surprising if they end up without Witherspoon, without Love, without Hall, and without Lawrence again. I think that's totally possible. And that, now you're adding Hall to that list. It's worse than they were going into this game. So, and who knows what happens with the concussions with Woolen, that is very hard to predict. So, challenging injury situation. And that's probably a good segue to get into some of the stats, some of the grades for players from PFF for this game. So, not that these are the end all be all, but it's always an interesting thing to refer to. So let's start actually on defense. And the top graded PFF player this week for the Seahawks was Byron Murphy. He had an 83.3 grade this week with 77.5 in pass rush, 71.0 in run defense. This was his highest graded game of the season. So he only had 1 pressure, but this was a game that at least PFF really liked his performance. And overall for the season, he's now up to a 74.3 grade. Last year, he was a 57.8 graded player. So a really, really big sophomore jump so far for Byron Murphy. The next highest graded player by PFF for the game against Tampa, Nick Emanwari, the rookie, his first game with meaningful snaps. He played 39 snaps and he had an 81.4 grade, 72.3 in run defense, 82.2 tackling, which matters given how bad the tackling's been, and 78.3 in coverage. So he had 25 coverage snaps. He had 7 snaps where he had to defend the run. And generally speaking, he had a really strong game from PFF's perspective. That's, I think, good news. It's hard to find good news in a game where your defense played that bad, but that's really good news for his first start. After that, it is a dramatic drop, folks. He had 2 guys graded above 80. And remember, 80 is Pro Bowl level. 90 and above is like all pro elite. There's not another player above 70. The closest is Kobe Bryant, 69.6. Reek Woolen was 61.5. 60 is an average starter. So, basically an average starter in that situation. Jaron Reed was 60.9. Uchenna Nwosu, 60.7. Boye Mafe, 60.4. Those were all the players that were above 60. Leonard Williams, 58.4. He had a 50.9 run defense grade. Not that the run defense was bad yesterday, but tackling, he had a 42.8. He did miss at least 1 tackle. Pass rush, not so great. Josh Jobe, 58. He had a 58.7 in coverage. Ty Okada, 56.1. He had a 55.5 in coverage. Mike Morris, this is part of where we get into who's replacing whom. He played a lot of edge with DeMarcus Lawrence out and Derek Hall out. And he had a 55.4 grade, 52.8 against run, 59.7 pass rush. He only had 1 pressure on the day. Brandon Peely, 54.5. Drake Thomas, 50.2. Tyrese Knight, 49.7, 36 coverage grade. Darian Kendrick, 35.6, 44.5 coverage. Nehemiah Pritchett, 31.8, 32 coverage grade. Yikes. Ernest Jones, the bottom of the pile, a 28.2 grade and 28.6 in coverage. Now, I will say this about Ernest Jones. I'm not saying he had a great game. I will say PFF has had some confusing linebacker scores and sometimes attributes coverage plays to linebackers that maybe are not their responsibility. So I can't say for sure he was that bad, but that is how they graded him. Offensively, Derek Young had a 91.0 grade. He only had 4 snaps, but it's still worth calling out because he did do really well when he got the opportunity. AJ Barner, 87.9 grade, 89.3 as a receiver, 69.9 run blocker. Ken Walker had an 83.5 grade. Worth noting, he had a 73.4 pass blocking grade. Now, he only had 1 rep where he was in pass protection, but he did much better in that regard than Zach Charbonnet. We'll talk about that in a second. Abe Lucas checks in at 81.3, and he was equally good passing and run blocking. So 80.4 pass block grade, 79.5 run block grade. Cooper Kupp had a nice game, 80.7 overall grade, 77.5 receiving, 82.0 run blocking. Sam Darnold had a 79.3 grade. Torrey Horton had a 78.0 grade. I think it's also worth noting Torrey Horton had an 80.3 run blocking grade. That is really cool to see for a pretty slender dude. JSN had a 76 grade. Charles Cross, 75.5. So your 2 tackles both played the way you hope they would play. Both played very solid games. Elijah Arroyo checks in with a 70.5 grade and had a 74.3 run block grade. That is huge. That's a really big deal. The more that Elijah Arroyo can be out there with AJ Barner and be an effective run blocker and make them less predictable as a pass team when he's on the field, the better it is. And so that's really, really great that Elijah Arroyo's, we've seen some promise in his run blocking overall and his effort. Great to see that kind of show up a little bit in the grading here. Eric Saubert had a 69.2 and he had a 77 grade as a run blocker. So they got a really nice performance so far from the three tight ends. And by the way, on the year, Elijah Arroyo has a 69.1 run blocking grade. He has had now 4 of the 5 games, he has been 67 graded or higher as a run blocker. I think that's an untold story so far this year and really, really cool. Zach Charbonnet, 55.4 overall grade, but he had an 8.1, not 18, not 80, 8.1 pass blocking grade. So he had a good running grade where he's just as a runner, ball carrier, is 67 grade there, but 8.1 pass blocking. So that's not good. Jalen Sundell, 47.5, struggled in pass protection. Gray Zabel, 44.0, not great. And in fact, Gray Zabel struggled both as a run blocker and as a pass protector, at least by these grades. Then Anthony Bradford right there below him, 42.3. Interestingly for Bradford, he had a very respectable 64.1 run blocking grade, which is what he has done essentially in 4 of the 5 games this year. He's been at 64 or higher as a run blocker, but he had his worst pass protecting game. I wouldn't have guessed that. They gave him a 0.0 grade as a pass protector in this game. He gave up 4 hurries, no quarterback hits, no quarterback sacks. I will have to go back and watch. That seems a little bit crazy, but that's what they gave him. And then Jake Bobo had a 39.6 grade, a couple penalties there, and Jalen Milroe finishes out with a 27.1. So it's kind of this situation where I felt like the offensive line had a really nice game in general yesterday. I thought the run game was as efficient, maybe the most efficient it's been all year. The Bucs have not allowed more than like 80 yards rushing all year, and the Seahawks go for 122. Saquon Barkley had averaged just over 2 yards a carry, and you had Ken Walker averaging like almost 9 yards a carry. And you also had this 2 tight end set that the Seahawks have been running, the 12 personnel, that they ran again a ton, and they spammed it, and it continues to be lethal. It is the top running 12 personnel team in the NFL by EPA per play. They rank number 1 in EPA per play when they run the ball in 12 personnel. They rank number 2 in the NFL in passing from 12 personnel. So again, I mentioned this last week. I think that they've found their bread and butter on offense, and I think it's going to be a lot of 12 personnel. And you've got A.J. Barner now sitting there with 8 touchdowns over his career, and what would that be, 4 this year? I just think that that's a really, really valuable personnel group because they are equally adept at running or passing. They have so far been almost exactly 50-50 running or passing out of that personnel package. Makes it tough on defenses. So I think that's going to be something to continue to monitor as time goes on. And the fact that they were able to put on that performance against a very good Tampa defense, even with their injuries, that's been a very good look. They were injured last week. They held the Eagles without a pass completion in the second half of that game last week and ended up with negative yards in the second half. Like, that defense is not anything to just take lightly. And the Seahawks put up almost 500 yards and 35 points against them and scored 5 straight touchdowns on 5 straight drives. So don't want to diminish how positive the offensive performance was and how much that can raise the overall ceiling for this team. But you got to stare the defensive performance in the face and acknowledge that this was a very injured Bucs team on offense, on the offensive line, in the receiver room, at the running back position. Like, they were down a lot of weapons and a lot of valuable players. So were the Seahawks. And the Seahawks defense was just basically not able to do anything. And one of the things you'd look at, you'd hope that Mike Macdonald would be able to do is understand what his personnel is capable of and at least put them in positions, one out of, like, worst case scenario, one out of every 15 plays, one out of every 10 plays, where you can make the right gamble, the right call, and give your defense a chance to make a play, a sack, a negative play, a turnover, something like that. Because when you're that limited in your personnel and what they're capable of doing, you have to take more risk. You have to take more chances. And one of the things I personally have some question about, like, you think about Mike Macdonald's personality and you think about the defense that he has made famous in the NFL, it mimics his personality. It allows him to be aggressive in creating pressure while always being conservative in coverage. And so he's not really taking chance. He's building sound defense that will generally protect his coverage players and generally make it so that they're not going to give up a lot of explosive plays. That's very different than like a Jim Johnson from, the early Eagles, like the 2000s Eagles, who was all about high risk blitzes. He really kind of created the zone blitz, and it would be unsound in that it would give up some areas where you could expose that defense if you diagnosed it correctly and got rid of the ball. But they kind of gambled that they'd get you more often than they got. And Mike Macdonald he's just not wired that way. He wants to create pressure without creating vulnerabilities. And I think part of what I looked at that game as yesterday is you can't do that with the personnel you had. You can't trust them to play assignment correct, sound football within your scheme. You've got to gamble. And they started trying to bring some more pressure. It worked with one blitz. The only sack of this game came on a blitz Mike Macdonald sent D'Anthony Bell on. And that was the only blitz. That was the only sack by either team, for what it's worth. But I don't know if Mike is going to be comfortable calling a game where he is sending 6 guys in order to try to heat up a quarterback and make them make a really tough decision. And I don't even know, I'll say this, I don't even know if that's going to be enough. He could be comfortable doing that. He could be good at doing that. We haven't seen it yet, but let's say he has that in his bag. Still don't know if the defense is going to be able to pull it off. And I don't know how you can look at this team through 5 weeks and not question just the lack of closer as a pass rusher. Like, I mean, we've talked about it a bunch of times. It has come up and them being unable to close out football games, even the Arizona game last week, which they won. They were not able to close that game out on defense. They should have been able to close out that game on defense. They didn't. They struggled they couldn't close out the game against the 49ers. The missing piece there primarily is someone who can get to the quarterback. When you're in a situation where the other team knows they have to pass the ball, either because they're behind or because they can't run the ball, you should have an advantage as a pass rusher to be able to win in those moments because you're going to get advantageous matchups. Seahawks have just not been able to do that. They have not been able to do that consistently. And so Derek Hall being out's huge. I think that doesn't help. I don't know that they've got another option on the roster. I was pretty frustrated yesterday that they had Connor O'Toole available for this game and Derek Hall went down and they still didn't play him. If you have that little confidence in his ability to step in then why is he active? I personally would have rather seen Jared Ivey in there. I think Mike Morris was getting some snaps on the edge. I think he played okay. I don't think Mike Morris is going to give you much edge rush or any edge rush from that position. I think Jared Ivey is a better combination of pass rushing and run defending in that moment, like in that role. I'm not Mike Macdonald, though. I will always acknowledge that, like, they know better than I do. But my personal read from what I've seen is I'd rather see Jared Ivey get a chance there. I don't think that Jared Ivey is your answer as like a dominant pass rusher, so I'm not suggesting that. But I'm more interested in what he can provide. Now, Connor O'Toole, he does have some interesting attributes as an edge rusher. And he looked really promising when he came on toward the end of training camp and in the preseason. But if you're not ready to put him out there, then don't have him active, man. Like, just don't do it. So outside of that, then yeah, I think you're looking at, do the Seahawks try to make a trade to add to that edge group? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they're going to do there. But it's very, very, very clear at this point through 5 weeks, their edge rush is not Super Bowl ready. Like, you might think that's crazy to be talking about a Super Bowl after that game, but I would just say this: if the Seahawks had a quality edge rush in addition to all the other things that they have and don't have, then this team would have like not a clear limitation from becoming a contender over the course of this season. Right now, even if they're at full health and things continue to go well, I'm not sure their ceiling from a pass rushing perspective is high enough to succeed in the playoffs. So I just think that's just something to understand about the roster. But let's talk about the coverage. Let's talk about the coverage and the players there. Before we do, let's get to some super chats because there's been a few that I've been putting off. Jacoby says, do you think Brian asked coach on the decision to start Pritchett over Griffin? I mean, I don't know. I haven't decided what I'm going to ask the coach when we go to the VMAC later today. I do have some personnel questions, but I haven't decided yet. So it's certainly on my mind. Jacoby says, correction, do you think Brian asked coach on the decision to start Pritchett over Griffin? I got you the first time. I get what you're talking about. Major Hawks coverage says, thoughts on a trade for Quandre Diggs from Tennessee? Yeah, I don't think so. But safety play was an issue. Ty Okada was not great in that game. And I do wonder a little bit if Jarek Reed offers you a more interesting athlete at that position when Julian Love's out. But I think the team really trusts Ty Okada, and he runs things as they expect him to be run. I just thought he was exposed a number of times. I thought that was a guy that they would try to go after in this game, and they did. They definitely did. Daniel Holtanius says, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't the Seahawks 2 specific plays away from being 5-0? And do you think that Kayvon Thibodeau would be available for trade? Swedish Hawks fan over here. Love the show, by the way. Well, appreciate you, Daniel. Yeah, I don't know if I'd say they're 2 specific plays from being 5-0. If you're talking about the Nick Bosa play, they still needed a touchdown. So even if they hadn't fumbled there, I don't think they were assured of getting a touchdown. And the interception that they threw was in their own territory. It wasn't like they were going to score a game-winning field goal if they didn't do it. So I don't see it as 2 plays away. I think they're many more than 2 plays away from being 5-0. I do agree that their 2 losses were close losses to very good, like teams that have been very good. One of them's 4 and both of them are 4-1. So take some solace in that, but I don't take a lot, because if you want to be one of the really good teams, you got to beat really good teams, and they haven't done that to this point. Do you think Kayvon Thibodeau would be available trade? I do, and I think he's probably the right mix of youth and last year of a deal and, promising edge rusher that would be interesting to bring in here. I just, I'm not sure what it's going to take, and I'm not sure that the Seahawks are at the moment ready to give whatever it would take. For a while, we've been talking about trading Woolen because the team has indicated they it doesn't seem like they're going to extend him. So it's his last year one way or another. And they've been quiet, like slowly having players eat away at his snaps. So it made sense that the team was looking to maybe move him. The team still might be looking to move him, but I think all of us that watched that game are like, no, no, no. No, no, no. You cannot get away with whether it's Shaquille Griffin or Nehemiah Pritchett and Josh Jobe, who, by the way, is, I think, showing a little bit of weakness is the wrong word, but vulnerability. I thought he was beat pretty bad, at least on one play yesterday. And then, Darian Kendrick, they basically have trained him in the nickel. I don't know if they feel confident with him outside, even though that's where he's played the majority of his career. I think that you move on from Woolen. I think that secondary looks very vulnerable. And even with Woolen's issues, I question that. So now if you're making a trade, you're probably making a trade with draft picks instead of a player. And I don't know. I don't know if the Seahawks, would they give up a 3rd round pick to trade for Kayvon Thibodeau? Would that be enough? It's right on the razor's edge for me. I'm not sure that Kayvon Thibodeau just turns this thing around for the Seahawks. The position that I'm actually kind of more interested in them looking to trade for might be linebacker. I feel like that is a lower valued position, and there's some players that you could probably go get, whether it's Demario Davis, maybe Jordan Brooks, maybe some of these other guys that are out there that I think would help your coverage and your run defense and solidify the middle of the field a lot. And the middle of the field was a big part of the problem yesterday. So that would be an interesting one to watch for me. Is more, I think that's a move that they could make for probably without having to give up too much. But we'll find out. So I got to tell you, I think everybody has been sleeping on Sam Darnold, myself included. And one thing I've got to just acknowledge is that he just went toe to toe with a guy who I think is the MVP through 5 weeks of the season in Baker Mayfield. Sam Darnold looks like he has the potential to be in that conversation for the 2nd straight year. That's huge. That's huge. If you want some help waking up refreshed, I've got something that might help you. And hopefully this also gives you a little bit of a smile. Hey, folks. I'm guessing you could see me, but I cannot see you because I am wearing the best sleep mask out there on the market, the Manta sleep mask. It is 100% blackout. I cannot see a thing. And one of the cool things with this model, this is the Manta Sound Sleep Mask. It's got these really cool Bluetooth speakers that adjust right over your ears, connects to your phone. You can play music, you can play white noise, whatever you like. There could be a 49ers fan right next to you. Doesn't matter. And let's face it, sometimes during the football season, you just need to recover. You need to take a nap. You need to block out the world. The Manta Sleep Mask is the best thing to do it. And if you use my code HAWKS, you will get 10% off your purchase over at Manta Sleep. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't look at other sleep masks. Manta Sleep is the best. Buy it. You won't regret it. So, guys, I'm telling you, it's a great sleep mask. Links in the description. And certainly I might take a nap at some point today. I need to block out a little bit of what happened and refresh. That's why I always do my morning after and try to be a little bit more level-headed, a lot less F-bombs the day after a game. But it's a great sleep mask, and the sound canceling stuff in the headphones is pretty cool. So take advantage. So Sam Darnold, I just want to, I think it would be crazy to just focus on how annoying the defense is. I want to get back to what they can potentially do on defense in a second. But if we focus all on how bad the defense was, and we spend no time acknowledging that Sam Darnold is having an MVP level year for a contract that is middle of the road in terms of cost for this year and 2 more years after, and that Clint Kubiak looks like a great hire on the offensive side of the ball. Those are really, really, really important, like, building blocks for any team. And I can't personally just put my hand over the fact that Sam Darnold has had the opportunity to lead 2 game-winning drives in 2 of the home games this year and has turned the ball over on both of those drives. That sounds really harsh and maybe unfair, but it is the reality. And to be the true elite tier of quarterbacks, you need to kind of be established as somebody who just wins those moments that other teams are on their heels because you're like the dominant player. Now, he does have the same amount of game-winning drives as Patrick Mahomes over the last 2 years. He has 2 this year. Like, he's done his job, generally speaking, in that regard. But these were 2 games that, even with everything else that went wrong, all the bad plays, like the defense makes a bad play, in the San Francisco game, there's a bad play call, there's a bad penalty, there's, whatever. Pick whatever you think you want to. Even with all of those things, Sam Darnold in the offense had the ball with a good chance to win 2 times at home, and they didn't do it. So he does have that still to, like, get to. Now, he was very good in those situations last year with the Vikings. I don't think it's this situation where he's doomed or that he's a choke artist or anything like that. But that's an issue. Like, he's got to prove to himself and to his team that he is the one that's inevitable in those situations to win the game, that it's not inevitable that he's going to make a play that ultimately costs the team the game. But again, I think that's focusing a lot on the negative. I think it's missing the fact that you've got real development from AJ Barner. You've got real development from Torrey Horton, who caught what could have been a game-winning touchdown in this game. He has 3 receiving touchdowns, 4 touchdowns overall in the season. Cooper Kupp, I thought, had a quietly great game yesterday. He made some catches that were really special catches, not high separation. Darnold put it in a place that I didn't think Kupp was going to be able to get to. He made the plays. I thought he had a really nice game. And JSN is just electric. I mean, he is doing things that I just don't think we've seen happen in Seattle among a receiver in a long time. I'll do some stats on this a little bit later, but I mean, it's remarkable. So if I look at this and I look at, where are we on receiving yards? Hold on. Let's look at leaders. Receiving NFL. Yeah, JSN is the only receiver outside of Puka Nacua to have over 500 yards receiving. Puka has 588. JSN has 534. And the other piece to what's going on, I got to bring up the explosive play stuff for JSN. But my God, I mean, the guy is having a heck of a year down the field. So if I go to, let's go to plays over 30 yards on the year. And we look at this for the entire NFL. I'm pretty sure he's had at least 1 in every game so far this year. He's got 5 30-plus yard plays on the year. The next closest is Igbuka, who has 4 on the year. So he probably got all 4 in that game, it felt like. But interestingly as well, you've got I'm trying to see it on Ken Walker. Ken Walker's also been one of the most explosive players on the season. If we go to plays over, let's go plays over 16 yards. And we'll look at it both running and passing. So if you look at receptions over 16 yards, JSN has 12. He's tied with Justin Jefferson and Puka Nacua for most there. And if you look for rushing plays, Ken Walker has 6. He is behind only Breece Hall and J.K. Dobbins for explosive rushes over 16 yards. Like, there's a lot to be optimistic about in terms of what that can mean for this offense going forward. The fact that they were able to do that against a good defense, I think, matters. They're going to be facing a lot more good defenses. That starts again with Jacksonville this week, who, by the way, we get to watch tonight on Monday Night Football against the Chiefs. At least the Jaguars will be having a tough game. They'll have shorter rest. Hopefully that will matter. Can't say. Let's just talk quickly about the defense. So what do? Let's assume for a second that, Derek Hall's out. DeMarcus Lawrence might still be out. You've got Uchenna Nwosu and Boye Mafe. I think that you've got to put, for me, I think you have Connor O'Toole and Jared Ivey as part of the mix. They bring different things to the table. Connor O'Toole's a better pass rusher. Jared Ivey's a better all-around, big end. I think both of those guys need to be put into the game plan. I don't know that that's going to make a huge difference, but I think that that's what you've got to do given what you've got on the roster. I think that Shaquille Griffin has to be on the 53 and Nehemiah Pritchett probably has to be cut. Now maybe they'll cut somebody else, but Shaq Griffin's got to be on the 53. He's at least got to be on the elevated squad, but I think he should be on the 53. And he's got to be the option over Nehemiah Pritchett. If they don't make that move, I'm going to have significant questions about what they're seeing and how they're coming to that conclusion. I don't think Pritchett is playable at this point. Then you've got safety. Don't know if Julian Love will be back. I think they'll likely stick with Ty Okada. I would personally like them to look at Jarek Reed and see what he can bring to the table. I think he's a more dynamic player, but that's up to the coaches to assess. You do have the benefit of Nicky Mawari coming in and playing what seems to be a good first game. You hope to get Woolen back. If you get Woolen back, then you're talking about Woolen and Job. You could start trying to play Kendrick outside and see if he's an option. If Woolen's not able to play, he's got a lot of starts outside. But I think that they'd be better off with Kendrick in the slot and Griffin outside if Woolen can't go. If you get Woolen and Witherspoon back, then you've got a lot of different options in terms of how you're able to play defense. If you don't have those guys back, then you're still going to have to primarily be a zone team. I don't think they can trust their guys to hold up individually in man. If you're going to be a zone team, you're not going to play Baker Mayfield every week and have him be able to just pick you apart. But teams are going to find some of the holes in those zones, and the Seahawks are going to have to bring pressure. Like, they're just going to have to be a higher blitz rate team than they've been to this point. They're going to have to take more chances. That's just the reality. And outside of that, I mean, you're talking about trying to make some additions personnel-wise and add players to your team. I don't know if this is going to be the week that they do that. And even if you do, it's going to take a while to incorporate those guys into your defense. Again, as far as bang for buck, I think the best moves they could make probably would be for an inside linebacker. Again, by the way. So that's the one that I have my eye on a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to need the pressure to be better than it was. You absolutely, it not even necessarily blitzes. You need Leonard Williams to be a defensive player of the year level guy. You need Byron Murphy to not just have good PFF grades, but be in the quarterback's lap. You need Boye Mafe to get his first sack of the season. You need those things to happen. You need individual players on that defensive line to be really effective getting to the quarterback and taking pressure off of the coverage unit. It's not rocket science. If the coverage isn't going to be great, you've got to get pressure on the quarterback. If you're not getting pressure on the quarterback, the coverage has to be great. And right now, what you saw yesterday is they weren't getting pressure and the coverage wasn't great. That is a recipe for disaster. At least they're still defending the run well. That'll be really important against Jacksonville. That'll be more important than it was this week against the Bucs. And I don't have the same respect for Trevor Lawrence as I do for Baker Mayfield. But that team is really good. And so the defense is going to have to come up with a different formula than they did for this one. Just double checking on Superchats. I don't think we have anything else new there. So that all said, here's where I'm at. The Seahawks are 3-2. They are 2-2 in the conference, right? And as I'm going to pull it up here, just so I've got the full standings. They're tied with the Rams at 3-2. They have a 1-1 division record where the Rams are 0-1. The 49ers are up there at 4-1. They're 4-0 in the conference. They're 3-0 in the division. And the Rams, by the way, are 0-2 in the NFC, like in the conference. So they're 0-1 in the division. They're 0-2 in the conference. That's good. But if you were to look at the overall conference record right now, the Seahawks are 6th. They are Eagles are 4-1, the 49ers are 4-1, the Bucs are 4-1, the Lions are 4-1. Of those teams, I feel like the Lions, the Bucs, and the Eagles are going to be able to sustain that level of performance. I do think the 49ers are going to come back to the pack a little bit. I still think that with their schedule, they're still going to probably win 11 plus games. But I don't think they're as nearly as good as those other teams. After that, you've got the Packers, who are 2-1-1. They have that tie, which could help them or hurt them. And then you've got the Seahawks, who are tied with the Vikings, who are 3-2. They're going to come in to play Seattle later this year. The Commanders, who are 3-2, who the Seahawks play in 3 weeks in Washington for a Monday Night Football game. Or is it Sunday night? I can't remember. I think it's Sunday night. Well, maybe it's Monday. Doesn't matter. They're playing on a primetime game in Washington. They're tied with the Rams, who are 3-2. They have 2 games left against the Rams. Then you've got the Falcons at 2-2, the Bears at 2-2, the Cowboys at 2-1. The sky is not falling, but this was a dangerous loss for this team. And it doesn't get super easy the rest of the way, but there's a real chance the Seahawks, if they can win against Jacksonville, they will then host the Texans for a Monday Night Football game at home. You have a chance to get to 5-2 before your bye. And if you do that, you then will have a really big game against the Commanders that I just think the Commanders are a beatable team, especially that defense. You have to like the Seahawks offense against that defense. Maybe you're healthier by then. Maybe you've made some moves by then. If you can get that tiebreaker head-to-head against them, and then you get the Vikings, who, again, you should hopefully be able to beat that team, you can kind of feel okay about your playoff potential. What is starting to feel unlikely is, home field advantage. I think winning the division is going to be hard, not impossible, but hard. And so, these next 2 weeks are just super critical. Like they're at a really injured state in their existence this season. They're going to have to find a way. They have to find a way to get through these next 2 weeks and get to the bye week in order to really kind of preserve their opportunity to be a relevant team this year. All right, folks. Only other thing I wanted to make sure, if you haven't already liked and subscribed, please do. If you have not used Sleeper yet, the app, go and do it. It's a great chance to do it. Not only do you get this opportunity to, excuse me, Not only do you have an opportunity to get $100 match on deposits up to $100, but you get a free $20 just for playing, just for using it. No deposits even required. So get the app, use promo code Hawks. You'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. And also, if you haven't had a chance to go to jkboots.com/hawkblogger, it is getting to be fall. And the best boots I'll ever own came from JK Boots. I actually was talking with Tim, who is the son of the owner of that shop. And it's a family-owned store in Spokane. Got like over 300,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel just to watch them work with leather. These are amazing boots. We got an amazing deal for you. Go to jkboots.com/hawkblogger. Get yourself ready for the fall with a great pair of boots. All right. I think that'll do it for this episode. We will have the coach at 3:30 today. We'll have some questions there. Monday Night Football, Jacksonville versus the Chiefs. That'll be a good chance to see the Jaguars ahead of that game. Until next time, I'm Brian Emhauser. This has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care.